Immigration to World War I. Part 2. And this time, it's personal. You didn't do too well on the Immigration to World War I test. You thought you were going to do good. You tried hard. You paid attention. You worked hard. It just didn't work out. No problem. Do not get mad. Get glad. Because now we have another opportunity for success. What you need is this video playing. You need that piece of paper that your teacher has provided you with all the blanks in it. Now you're going to follow along and text is going to appear on the screen. You are going to write the text in red in the blanks, and that will create the most premium study guide you could ever imagine. You're going to take that study guide, you're going to make note cards from it, you're going to study those note cards, and you're going to take this test one more time, and you're going to destroy it the second time. Let's start with talking about a little bit about immigration. You know, we are a country of immigrants, with the exception of Native Americans, who also immigrated in their own way. More conventional immigration has been going on since 1607, but it happens in different places and in different ways. The older style of immigration, before 1871, is most immigrants coming from, write this in, Northern and Western Europe. When America gets going, that is where your immigrants are coming from. I'm talking about Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden. You write in Northern and Western Europe. Now here's the easy thing about history. It is so easy. That was old immigration. New immigration is just the opposite. So it's not from Northern and Western Europe, but it is from Southern and Eastern Europe. From 1871 to 1921, most immigrants came from Southern and Eastern Europe. Write that in. And those countries would be Italy, Greece, Poland, Russia, Hungary, the former Yugoslavia, and then write this in at the end, and Asia, as well as China and Japan. We see an influx of immigrants from Asia as well during this period of new immigration. Alright, let's talk real quickly about the European immigrants. Now, they're going to come through Ellis Island. Immigrants from Europe entered through Ellis Island. That is in New York City. It is in New York Harbor. Take a look at this picture back here. See this statue all the way back right there? That is the Statue of Liberty. Their first view of America was often, my face is blocking this, you want to write this in, the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France, and what a symbol that would be if you were an immigrant looking for liberty, looking for freedom, looking for opportunity, to see a statue that is emulating all of those things. Still on 3, guys. We're still on 3. Here we go. Immigrants who came to the New World began a process of, big word, assimilation. Assimilation is a fancy word really for blending in. Blending into what was termed the American melting pot, learning the culture, language, values of America, while at the same time contributing their own bit of knowledge, expertise, culture, language to that melting pot to create a melting pot of assimilation in the United States of America. We're on 4 now. We're on 4. Immigrants settled into ethnic neighborhoods, meaning they settled where they were comfortable, where they were surrounded by people from their old hometowns, their old countries in Europe or in Asia. Now, they worked hard to learn English and adopt American customs and become citizens. Now, where do you think all this learning English, adopting American customs was bred? Where did the ideas come from? What was the factory for this assimilation? Well, that was public schools. Write this in. The public schools served an essential role in the process of assimilating immigrants into American society. There was no bilingual education. The only language that was present in an American public school was English, forcing these immigrant children to learn English and to adopt American customs, which they did. Why would an immigrant come to the New World, or I should say the United States of America? The same reason they've always been coming. Immigrants came to America seeking freedom, most specifically political freedom, and better lives for their family, economic opportunity that they could not get in Europe or in Asia. Immigrants contributed to the dramatic industrial, write that in, industrial growth of America. This is the period of time where America industrializes. Remember, we are very laissez-faire, but we are also having a greater supply of workers because of immigrants, as well as people migrating from farms. But immigrants is the big reason. Chinese workers helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, which connected east to west. And once you had connected east to west, there was a dramatic increase in westward movement of settlers, people being able to go west. And we can thank Chinese laborers for doing that. Now, none of this work was easy work. Immigrants from southern and eastern Europe worked in textile and steel mills of the northeast, and write this in, coal, C-O-A-L, coal mines in the east. So, said it's not easy work, unsafe work. Immigrants often faced low pay and endured dangerous working conditions as they contributed to the industrial growth of the United States of America. Now, with all of this good stuff happening, you might think that immigrants were welcome to the United States, but that was not the case. 8. We're on 8. Immigrants often faced hardship and hostility. Folks were hostile to these immigrants. Why? Why would they hate these new immigrants? Well, they would have fear and resentment like a deep hatred, that these immigrants were going to work for less money. They were going to take jobs away from them because they would do them for cheaper. This prejudice was also based off religious. And then write this in, this word I'm blocking is cultural. Religious and cultural differences. Religious, the United States up to that time is a predominantly Protestant country. But now you have more Catholics coming from Eastern and Southern Europe with different cultures, different ideas, not accepted by folks in the United States of America, or not all folks in the United States of America. So, this mounting right-in resentment, deep hatred, this mounting resentment led Congress to pass a few laws. Two big ones I want to talk about. The first one was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which cut off Chinese immigration. And then the Immigration Restriction Act of 1921, which established quotas which made it harder for folks from Southern and Eastern Europe to come to the United States of America. So what was the goal of these laws? To shut off immigration to the large part. And that's what they did. 9. These laws cut off most immigration to the United States for the next several decades. So we have a swing. On one side, the swing goes up, and it is positive immigration, all the great things that's happening, but as it swings down, it is being dragged down by the resentment of folks in the United States of America towards these immigrants. All right, let's talk about city development. If the United States is industrializing, we're getting big cities, right? As the U.S. industrial growth continued, cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, New York grew as manufacturing, meaning they made lots of stuff, and transportation centers. Movement, stuff is coming in and out of these big cities in the United States of America. Now, still on 10, factories provided jobs, and that was great. But workers often lived in harsh conditions, crowded into tenements and slums. Tenements, homes that not the workers owned, but they rented, that were in horrible conditions, and slums obviously also in bad conditions. We have overcrowded cities. So what does that mean we need? New public services. The rapid growth of housing shortages and need for new public services means New York City becomes the first to begin construction on a, write this in, subway system, and many cities built trolley and streetcar lines during this period of city development, rapid urbanization. All right. Switching gears, major conversation topic shift, major new point. Let's talk about African American history at the turn of the 20th century. Now, the last time we were on this topic, we were talking about Reconstruction. Wow, blank. We were talking about Reconstruction, and we talked about at the very end how when Reconstruction ended, Jim Crow laws began. So that's where we left off. Here we go, 12, 12, 12. After Reconstruction, Southern states passed Jim Crow laws, write in Jim Crow. What did the Jim Crow laws say? It forced separation of the races in public places. So these are segregation laws. As you see in this picture, restrooms were segregated, water fountains were segregated, restaurants were segregated, hospitals were segregated. All over the South we have this separation. So African Americans decided, let's have a Supreme Court case to get rid of these terrible laws. And that Supreme Court case was Plessy versus Ferguson. But Plessy versus Ferguson upheld segregation, said segregation is okay to continue in the United States of America. Write this in. It ruled that separate but equal, see, here's the thing. They said that you can have separate, but it has to be equal. Well, everybody knows that it wasn't truly equal. Did not violate the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says that states cannot deny equal rights under the law to any American. But this says they can as long as things are equal, because then it doesn't really violate the 14th Amendment. The case was Plessy versus Ferguson. Here's Plessy right here. And he sat in the whites section of a train. See, he's trying to challenge segregation, but it didn't work in Plessy versus Ferguson. 14, let's take a look at Ida. This is Ida B. Wells. She fought to end lynching in America. She wanted to get a constitutional amendment passed against lynching, but was unable to get that done. She did, though, write much literature and pass attention to the lynching situation in the United States of America, and in that way, lynching greatly decreased. The Great Migration, right in the Great Migration, was an exodus of African Americans out of the South. You see, African Americans faced poverty and discrimination and were more likely to want to leave the South. So as they started leaving in greater numbers, the Great Migration is what occurred. Let's talk about two big people. This is a huge difference. We got to understand the difference between these two people who were leaders in the African American community. Booker T. Washington, first one, Booker T. Washington, believed the way to equality was through vocational education and economic success. What is vocational education? It means not going to school to be a lawyer or a doctor or a poet. It's going to school to learn how to become a better farmer or a better plumber or a better carpenter, getting real job skills that will allow you to go out, not waste your time in school, and start making money immediately. He accepted, write this in, he accepted social separation. He said that this is not an issue we need to focus on. Don't worry about the Jim Crow laws right now. I don't like them, but let's not worry about them. Let's worry about getting jobs first. Just the opposite of Booker T. Washington was W.E.B. Du Bois. He believed that education was meaningless without equality. Who cares that you have good vocational education if there's no equality? He supported, write this in, civil rights and political equality for African Americans and helped form, alright, so we got civil rights and political equality and helped form, write this in, long one, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The NAACP was formed by W.E.B. Du Bois, rejecting Booker T. Washington's belief in vocational education and advocating for civil rights and political equality. While this is happening, like we said, this is a repeat. During the early 20th century, African Americans began moving to northern cities in search of jobs and to escape poverty and discrimination. This was called the Great Migration. They are in search of jobs and getting rid of poverty and discrimination, and that is the Great Migration. You write that in, and then we are golden with African American history at the 20th century. Next topic is the progressive movement. Now, we talked about industrialization and all of the great things that industrialization did to the United States of America, but there were some negatives. And the progressive movement looks to fix the problems created by industrialization. Let's go to number 17, number 17, number 17. The progressive movement used government, please write in government, for reforms of problems created by industrialization. So government is going to be the tool of the progressive movement to try to fix the problems created by industrialization. There will be 2 presidents that have major progressive movement programs. The first one to talk about is Theodore Roosevelt's. His plan was called the Square Deal. My face is covering the text, so please write in for Teddy Roosevelt. Square Deal. He believed that everybody, all Americans, were entitled to a fair or square deal by the United States government. Now, specifically what Teddy Roosevelt is talking about, and I want you to write this underneath Square Deal, is please write regulate trusts. Regulate trust. The way to remember this is Roosevelt regulator. He did not want to destroy trust, and when we talk about trust, we mean monopolies. He wanted to regulate them. Woodrow Wilson's program was called New Freedom. Please write in New Freedom for Woodrow Wilson. And now Woodrow Wilson doesn't want to regulate trust. He wanted to destroy trusts. Please, below New Freedom, please write in destroy trusts. Got that? Great, good, awesome. Let's go to 18. Let's talk about the causes of the progressive movement. And let's just think about this real quick. If the progressive movement wants to make things better, then it must have been caused by things that were not good. So we're talking about these causes of progressive movement. We're going to talk about a lot of bad stuff. That's a lot of bad stuff. Excesses of the Gilded Age. Please write in Gilded Age. When we talk about Gilded, we're talking about the era of American history when it looked like everything was covered in gold. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, that time period. Income disparity and lavish lifestyle of the robber barons. Please write in robber barons. When we talk about Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, Vanderbilt, we also talk to them as captains of industry, but they're also known as robber barons to those who are not big fans of how they conducted their business. Dangerous working conditions, child labor was very prevalent during this time. Long hours, low wages, no job security, no benefits, company towns, and employment of women. All issues that the progressive era looks to fix. 3 goals. Number 19, the goals of the progressive movement. 3 big ones. 3 main ones. Government controlled by the people, as in the everyday citizen, not the super rich industrialist who manipulates government power. Government controlled by the people. Guaranteed economic opportunities through government regulation. Remember, the progressive movement uses government as the tool to try to make things better, so it makes sense that they would be in favor of government regulation and the elimination of social injustices, all of the bad stuff that we just listed. So that's the cause of the progressive movement. That's the ideas of the progressive movement. Those are the goals of the progressive movement. Did they actually accomplish anything? Yes, the progressive movement was very accomplished. Let's go through these. Number 20. Local governments, new forms of government, the commissioner style and city manager style, to meet the needs of increasing, please write in, urbanization. Increasing urbanization. They needed new forms of government in which there would be experts to try to meet the needs of increasing urbanization. That's why commissioner style and city manager style forms of government became popular. In state governments, at the state level, we have referendum. Now, a referendum is when citizens directly vote on legislation. A way to remember this is look at the root word for referendum. It is referee. Like you are the referee to decide whether or not a bill passes or not. The next one, initiative. When we think to initiate, it means to start. Initiative is when citizens would introduce legislation. So you would write up a bill and then give it to your legislatures to then vote on, but you're the one who starts it. It is your initiative. Last one is recall, to remove politicians from office. Some governors, state government governors, have been recalled out of their political office. These are all reforms from the progressive movement. What about elections? In elections, have there been changes? There's been an increase in primary elections. Primaries in which citizens get to vote of that political party who they want to represent them in the national election. The use of the secret ballot or a private ballot, so you can vote in private, not in public. And the direct election of senators. Which amendment is the direct election of senators? That is the 17th Amendment. Please write in 17th for the direct election of senators. Before that, the state legislatures voted for senators. Now the people themselves will vote for senators. 23, child labor. Muck raking. Please write in muck raking. Literature led to child labor laws. Children were not allowed to work as much, so instead they got to go to the land of paradise that we call school. 24, the Sherman Antitrust Act. So you got trusts, and oftentimes they're acting as monopolies or totally controlling an industry. So there's 2 laws to try to change the trust situation. The Sherman Antitrust Act prevents business structures that restrain trade, and please write in monopolies. We're talking about monopolies, so we're looking to take them down. But what does that mean? Is that specific at all? Not really. So it was poorly worded, poorly enforced. A new law is passed after Sherman, which is, please write this in, the Clayton Antitrust Act, which expands the Sherman Antitrust Act. See the last 3 letters on Clayton? T-O-N, ton, like a lot. Clayton brought a ton of power to expand the Sherman Antitrust Act. Outlaws price fixing. So if I'm Mr. Tire Salesman and I got 3 other tire salesmen, we can't all get together and lower our prices to force another tire salesman out of business and then raise our prices. We can't do price fixing. Also, unions will not be broken up by the Clayton Antitrust Act. It exempts unions. Very important, very important, very important. A lot of accomplishments. What about the women's suffrage movement? What about accomplishments for them? The women's suffrage movement was led by Susan B. Anthony. There were many leaders, but she was the most influential, the most important leader of the women's suffrage movement was Susan B. Anthony. This was the forerunner to the modern protest movement. They would picket the White House, get thrown in jail, and have hunger strikes inside of jail. Also, women entered the, please write in, women entered the workforce during World War II, and eventually earned women's right to vote, which is the 19th Amendment. So the 17th Amendment is the direct election of senators, and the 19th Amendment is women's right to vote. Progressive movement done. Let's shift gears, major change of topic, and talk about imperialism. You know, at first the United States would just stay all by itself, not look to get involved in world affairs. And then in the late 1800s, the U.S. abandoned its isolationist policy in favor of getting more involved in world affairs. So the United States will become more involved in the world affairs. The growth of international trade from the late 1800s to World War I was the era of the first true global economy. Please write global in, because it's the era of the first real global economy. Alright, so how is the United States going to get involved? What is the United States going to do to try to increase business profits? Number 29 in 1883. The U.S. would help depose, that means get rid of, the Hawaiian monarch. Queen Liliuokalani was deposed in 1883. The U.S. would annex, that means to add, so please write annex in. The U.S. would annex Hawaii. Now, why would you want Hawaii? I want you to look at this map right here. So here's the United States, here's Hawaii, and here's Asia. Now, you're doing business with Asia. That is a long trip over there. Your boats will run low on gas. What's about right way in the middle? That would be Hawaii. You could use Hawaii as a gas station. So the U.S. would annex Hawaii, a strategic fueling location. Please write in fueling, F-U-E-L-I-N-G, location. So the U.S. is starting to annex, add territories. The U.S. will continue this because of the Spanish-American War. American victory in 1898 in the Spanish-American War results in the U.S. annexing 2 big territories. Please write in Puerto Rico, very close to the United States of America, and the Philippines. Please write in Puerto Rico and the Philippines. 2 P's that the United States was pleased to add after the Spanish-American War. Now, in Cuba, the U.S. asserted the right to intervene in, please write this, in Cuban affairs. So Cuba was not annexed, but the U.S. had more power, more influence in Cuba because they had the right to intervene in Cuban affairs. Good, great, got it, awesome, love it. What about in China? The open door policy was proposed by Secretary of State John Hay. John Hay proposed the open door policy. What did it state? It stated that all nations should have equal trading rights in China, and all foreigners must obey Chinese law and fair competition. The United States set up trade spheres in which all nations have equal trading rights in China. There's some imperialism in China. What about an imperialist dream to have a canal that would connect the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean? Number 33, President Theodore Roosevelt encouraged Panama's independence from Colombia. So we have the nation of Colombia, which controls the area that is Panama, where the Panama Canal will be built. The Colombia will not sign a treaty with the United States to build the canal. So Teddy Roosevelt goes to Panama and says, get rid of Colombia, which is exactly what they do. When they get rid of Colombia, the U.S. and Panama negotiate a treaty to build the Panama Canal, and the Panama Canal has been built. So what we see is that Teddy Roosevelt is very aggressive with Latin American affairs. There will be a change with this, a major change with William Howard Taft. Instead of getting aggressive, Taft believes in dropping dollar bills, y'all. President Taft urged American investment in Latin America and promised that the U.S. would protect investments in Latin America. You know how you remember this? You know Laffy Taffy, delicious candy. Get it at 7-Eleven, so good. You get the big one, right? Laffy Taffy. Kind of sounds like Taft, Tap. How much does a Laffy Taffy cost? Just about $1. $1, dollar diplomacy, Laffy Taffy. Laffy starts with a L-A, as in Latin America, where dollar diplomacy takes place. So the U.S. banks and businesses will invest in Latin America. Not do so much with the gun, but with the wallet. Let's talk about World War I, last major topic on this review. World War I began in Europe in 1914, and the United States was not involved in World War I in 1914. This is when Germany and Austria-Hungary went to war with Britain, France, and Russia. When Germany and Austria-Hungary went to war with Britain, France, and Russia. What is America doing? Staying out of there. America remained neutral for 3 years. Then why did the United States get involved in World War I? The U.S. entered war due to, write this in, long one, German submarine. Please write in German submarine warfare. German submarine warfare. And ties to Great Britain. Germany had sunk the American travel ship, the Lusitania. I'm sorry, the British travel ship, the Lusitania, which had 128 Americans on board who died with the sinking of the Lusitania. Also had ties to Great Britain, which helps explain why the United States joins World War I. Who was president during World War I? It was Woodrow Wilson. President Wilson asked for war, and he made a famous quote when he asked for war. He said that America must make the world safe for, write this in, democracy. The United States must make the world safe for democracy. Democracy is your key word. That is the quote that brings the United States into World War I. Now think about this with the World War I. You got two sides that are tied. They are completely tied. Germany and Austria-Hungary on one end, Russia, France, Great Britain on the other end. if the United States joins one side, that side gets stronger. It tips the balance and can drive out the other power. That's what happens. And number 38, U.S. military resources tipped the balance of war and led to Germany's defeat. Please write in tipped the balance of war and led to Germany's defeat. So the war is over. How do you fix the situation in Europe? President Wilson comes up with 14 points. He's got 14 things he wants to see get done at the Treaty of Versailles. They include self-determination, freedom of the seas, a League of Nations, and a mandate system. Now, he believes that if you follow all of his 14 points, it would prevent the causes of future wars. President Wilson says that if you follow the 14 points, there will be no more war forever. He will eliminate and guarantee world peace. At the Treaty of Versailles, however, France and Britain insisted on punishing Germany. Germany was greatly punished. They did come up with a League of Nations, and national boundaries were withdrawn. But did the United States agree to the Treaty of Versailles? Did the United States join the League of Nations? No. The U.S. Senate rejected the Treaty of Versailles. Please rejected the Treaty of Versailles. And they objected to U.S. foreign policy decisions being made by an international organization. You know what the crazy thing about this is? The United States rejected the Treaty of Versailles because of the League of Nations. Who came up with the League of Nations? Woodrow Wilson, who is from the United States. You know what that is? It is very ironic.